I had rented a house my senior year of college, and I grew up living in a house. That was my total exposure. So it was the next couple months, nights and weekends, really learning as much as I could, as quick as I could, through podcasts, videos, the course that we had bought, as well as leaning on my mom and my cousin, who were both agents and had done some other stuff. So quick learning curve. And then for the next several months, just failed to flip a single home in the Long Island area. We tried for several months and just really couldn't put anything together. It was two major reasons, one larger than the other. The first reason is the course we used was based on quick calculations for renovation dollars by square footage. And it probably worked great for most parts of the country. High cost of living areas wasn't really suited for that. However, I say, that's not really the major excuse. The major reason, or I should say reason, not excuse. It's an excuse, really. But the major reason was just a lack of execution. We only did it for several months. We could have easily taken those systems and applied it to, our area, learned all the new pricing, learned all the new strategies, and changed it around. However, we decided to, instead of trying to make it work on our own, find somebody with a little bit more experience and partner with them. So we ended up lending money to a decently experienced flipper in Pennsylvania, and his cousin ended up being John Cohen, who's one of the owners for the company I work for now. So met John. They were going to teach us how to buy properties at auction that were tax deeds down in Philadelphia, because we thought that would be interesting, buying homes for pennies on the dollars, flip them, and you got them in a really good area. My cousin and I drove 50, 60, 70 houses, quickly realized wasn't for us. It was just super rough. It was going to take a ton of time. It's 2.5, 3 hour drive each way, or you'd have to stay over. He was already working 2 jobs. He was about to have his first kid, or had just had his first kid. My mom had no desire to drive back and forth, so I knew it was going to fall on me, and I was just like, this isn't going to work out. So came back and kind of regrouped. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
And was sitting down with John, and he was raising money for this little 8 unit in Covington, Kentucky. And we had just started hearing about multifamily, so we thought it was really interesting and decided to do the same thing as we did with the flip, invest passively and just pick his brain. So started jumping on phone calls, getting coffee, once a week, every other week for like a month or two, and just very quickly realized that had a lot of same values, really good synergies, just got on really well, and asked him if, he would be interested in, letting us be a part of the general partnership or joint venture on a deal and, take some of the workload off his plate. He said, sure. So we ended up buying another 17 units in the same area. Instead of being a passive investor, we were on the general partnership for those. And then we also joint ventured on an 82 unit deal down in Jacksonville, Florida. And then while we were doing that 17 unit, I was still working as a stockbroker and absolutely hated it and was ready to quit with nothing else lined up. I'd stayed on like an extra 2-3 months just to try to find something else I can do. So while I'm doing all this, I'm trying to find new jobs as well. And just as luck would have it, sitting down with John one day by myself, and as we were talking, just telling him more about what I'm doing and how I'm thinking of quitting, a name popped up, and he had actually worked for the same people I was working for about 5-6 years prior. So he got it. And just as we were talking, he just said, hey, look, why don't you come work for me and my partner? It's probably a little too early for us, but we'll bring you on as like a trial period. We'll pay you a little bit, but at least worst case scenario, you get a little bit more experience, you make a little bit of money, you get out of your job, you can throw it on your resume, and we'll see what happens. And I said, sure. So sat down with John and his partner, Don, and decided to move over full time in August 2016. And I've been there ever since. So we're coming up on almost 4 years now.
And, it's funny, and I'd love to meet your partner one day, because in our businesses that we have, the 3 or 4 businesses that we have, the fourth one is about to launch, a lot of those businesses are too early in the process as well to bring on the talent. But what I realized is that in order for us to scale, in order for me to make sure that I'm in the role that I need to be in, I had to bring on people like earlier than I thought, because I read a book and it's like, dude, when you find the talent, like you've got to grab them and you got to hold on to them. So I would imagine that's crazy that y'all never met and you worked at the same company, because that's synergy to that. Like, he knew exactly how you were feeling. He's like, I'm going to give this guy a shot, and then here we are now, and y'all are crushing it. But I would imagine, like, in the process, like, my two questions are, how did you have money to invest in deals? Was it from your job? The second question is like, everybody always asks me all the time, like, how did you make that decision that, like, there's a lot of people that would have stayed at the coaching job. There's a lot of people that would have stayed at the stockbroker job, right? How did you say, like, how did you burn the boats and say, like, I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm going to sure give it a shot, because I'm that type of guy too. Like, I'm just going to go for it. And like, I just got laid off like a month ago. And like, for the first time in my life at 38 years old, I'm betting on myself. And it feels amazing. I mean, it's really hard to describe.
That's awesome.
We have like minus revenue right now, but who cares? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the Airbnb world is like literally destroyed, but like, that's okay though. And so, like, I guess that's where I want to go with, because this shows a lot about mindset, lifestyle, stuff like that. And we'll talk about real estate too, but like,
so I think those early years are interesting. And as you were talking, I kept moving where I was going to start the timeline further and further back. I think one thing that I do that I like is, oftentimes, not always, because I get lazy and I procrastinate, but oftentimes when I make decisions and bigger decisions, I try to think about what Chris in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years now would look back on and say, hey, I'm happy I did that. Hey, I'm happy, I made that decision. And I try to reverse engineer what that would be. So the first time I ever really saw that play out was going into my senior year of college. I wasn't like I had a little bit of scholarship money for playing. But I wasn't like a big recruit. I barely played my first 2 years. I played a little bit my junior year. And, if you're not playing by then, you're not going pro. You're not really doing anything. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was like, this is it. Like, it's, you've been sitting on the bench for basically 3 years now. You're going to do something about it or not. So that summer, me and a few of my buddies, we rented a house. We did a year-long lease. So instead of going home for the summer, I said, Mom, Dad, I love you. I'll still see you, but I'm staying here for the summer and I'm just training. Like, that's it. So spent that whole summer, 3 days, eating super clean, barely drank, maybe a couple times that summer. And, when we were at school, we would drink several times a week. So it was like a drastic cutback, and just trained a ton. And at the time, I dropped like 10 pounds over the summer, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're already an athlete, like, we had to run 3 miles in 17-30 minutes. So like, already a pretty decent athlete, that's a good amount of weight to shed. And it was like, came into that preseason and just a lot of different benchmarks, I just jumped up significantly from other people. And like that year, I didn't become a bona fide starter, but I think I started like half or 3/4 of the games, played in almost every single one. So it was, if I had done that earlier, I think it would have led to more. But it was like, okay, it was like, put your head to the grindstone for 2-3 months and let's see what happens. And the results were just very visceral. So once I saw that, that was like leading to that process of like, okay, what are we going to do now, slowly but surely every day, so that we'll see the effects in the long term. And that's kind of how I was saying, like, that's how I started to think about things like, okay, let's do it in the future. Let's think about going forward. So when you ask, how did you make that decision to leave the coaching job? It was, I took a long, hard look and said, okay, if I want to be in this coaching world, here's what I've got to do. Because I was making $5,000 a year as that assistant coaching job. I got free housing on campus as well. But
you're fucking with me, right?
No, I promise you. I'll show you my tax returns for the first 2 years out of college. I was below the poverty line. Oh shit! I promise you. I swear to you. My mom couldn't believe it. I would file my taxes. I would pay.
You gotta humor me. What is that a month?
I don't know. What's 5,000 divided by
4? It like
6,000 would be $500. So, but that's my point. So, but it's considered a part-time role. So I took on a part-time role knowing that I would have to go get other jobs. So like, I didn't make $5,000 for the year. I think I made like 20 or 25 or something like that on paper. And but that's because I coached youth soccer. I did tournaments. Over the summer as a coach, they do a ton of like camps and stuff for college kids, and you get paid pretty well there. So you can make good money as a college coach, but you're working tons of hours. You're going to work 40 plus hours, and you're going to work 7 days a week, and you're going to work during the quote unquote best times of the year. So summer, forget about it. Your tournaments and camps and stuff like that. Your time off is really kind of like the winters. And then, fall and spring, you're working 7 days a week as well. Saturdays and Sundays, you're youth coaching, or, you've got games for college. So I saw that. I was like, I'm going to work more than a lot of jobs. I'm going to make next to nothing now, unless I like start my own camp or, do these different things, which I thought about. But I said, like, I want to go back to New York, but ultimately I want to be the head coach of a program. Like, that was, if this is what I'm doing, that's what I want to do. I don't want to be an assistant. I wanted to, build a program, find somewhere I like, then build a program. That was like, if I'm going to do this, that's what I want. But I was like, I also want to be in New York. And I thought about it, and there's like less than 10, I think there's like 5 or 6 Division I schools, and there's like another 5 or 6 Division II. I was like, I wanted to be Division I if I could, but I would do Division II just because of the rules and, the money and, the size of the programs and things like that. And I was like, it's hard enough to scale up to that role anywhere in the country itself quickly. But now I'm going to constrain myself to, 1% of the total schools in the country. I just said, for me, living where I wanted to live was more important than that job. So I just kind of said, look, I can do this, but I don't want to move down to Florida. I don't want to move to West Virginia. I don't want to move to Louisiana to go into these schools, because I'm not going to, Worcester is a nice little city. Like, it's a mini kind of, I don't want to say mini Brooklyn, I'll say kind of, like, it's a nice little city. Like, it's got cool stuff. It's got, the bars, the coffee shops and everything. Like, it's a nice little, it's a mini Boston. Let's say that. Mm-hmm. And it's close to Boston. It's close to New York. It wasn't too far from home. I was like, if I'm going to move somewhere else in the country, it's definitely not going to be as good as this. So I just kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I just took a step back and I said, you've got to understand what this means for you in the future, and does it fit with what you want? And ultimately, being back in New York close to my family and friends was more important than that future job outlook, basically. Mm-hmm.